So the interesting thing about our layer 7 denial of service protection with ASM is this is actually a separate feature of ASM. It has nothing to do with the security policy. Everything you played with up until this point with ASM is all attached to a security policy, which is attached to the virtual server. This is not. This is attached to a denial of service profile, which is also attached to a virtual server. So one virtual server can just have a security policy and no denial of service profile, or a virtual server can have just a denial of service profile and no security policy. Preferably, of course, virtual server will have both. So let's talk a little bit about the challenge with layer 7 denial of service attacks compared to everything else we've done in the 3-day partner bootcamp and today. Everything we've done so far, we are sitting in the desk of a malicious user and we're trying to submit requests that are malicious. They are bad requests. They're trying to change parameter values. They're trying to play with somebody else's session. They're trying to do a SQL injection attack. Many number of things, but they are in fact malicious requests. These are a little bit different. So our website has files like images, our logo, pictures of our products and so forth. It has other files like style sheets. Maybe we have PDF files that you can download. Just any number of files that are not malicious requests. Anybody at any time can just go and request those files. I just want to see your logo. So I'll send a mint request just for the logo.gif. When the firewall gets it, that's not malicious. And when ASM gets it, that's not malicious. That's a valid request. What happens though is malicious user puts together a script and just has the script constantly requesting certain files as fast as that workstation can request them, over and over and over and over again. But more often than not, it's just this one guy. No. It's several guys. He gets the whole botnet together, running that same script, just doing nothing but making requests for the logo or the PDF or whatever. To the point where the web server has had so many requests that it finally gets taken offline. Or maybe the network firewall gets taken offline. None of this kind of problem we cannot block with a security policy, because the security policy is looking for positive security. Well, this is the logo.gif. GIF is a valid file type. The logo is a valid URL. And we're looking for negative security, like attack signatures. Well, that had no attack signatures. So nothing about the request for that logo is malicious. So ASM security policy is not going to block that. We need something else. Of course, that's our layer 7 denial of service protection. So I've got a few statistics. Again, these are fairly new. Just researched some of them. Main one here, continuing to increase. Continuing to increase. That's important. Not flatlining, not going down, but continuing to increase. Some other statistics. Just a small little loss in money for a single attack. 8 out of 10 companies are subject to several attacks per year. And let's see, we have an increase in HTTPS-based attacks. And the longest attack, just for interesting statistics, lasted for 12 days. One continuous denial of service attack. For 12 days, at whatever company that was trying to keep their website up. Imagine. And then Linux botnets are rising. So all those bots that we were looking at. So the use of botnets is becoming very popular because they're very easy to configure. And they can just flood a target with requests using a variety of tools, some of which you'll use in your exercise. Then we also have HTTP floods. An HTTP flood, this is some of the statistics here, average lasting 34 hours, longest one 71 hours. Again, on average, 7,200 requests per second during a flood, with a peak of 49,000 requests per second. And an attacker's botnet can leverage up to 11,000 some odd different IP addresses, different source IP addresses. This one's almost 90,000 source IP addresses. And that makes it very hard to do any kind of source-based protection here. We don't know who's good and who's bad. So what does all this mean? This means that this is a big problem that many organizations are facing. And they need something. They need something to stop all of this and to take away all these problems. This chart just shows you some of the common HTTP flood victims, media sites, gaming sites, forums, e-commerce. It's just a chart that I found. It's just an interesting FYI chart. So that's just some of the statistics. So that's the why. That's the why we need help. So let's talk now a little bit about how the ASM's DOS protection works. So we already have our ASM set up. We have our virtual server, and we may or may not have a security policy attached. In this case, I do have a security policy attached, which is good for things like SQL injection protection and so forth. That works out really well. Now I'm drawing this little perimeter here, but that's not to identify like a network firewall perimeter. It's to show a picture here in just a moment. Imagine this is like a barrier. This is like a shield that we're putting out there. This is my Layer 7 denial of service shield. So there are three main ways that Layer 7 denial of service works. The first is it can recognize a source of traffic and an increase in transactions per second, or just a maximum threshold of packets per second from a single source, based on a variety of different source types, kind of like we saw a little bit earlier with brute force. So if the number of requests from a source has reached a level or is going up by a certain percentage, then we can recognize that source as a likely DOS source. And we can blacklist them immediately. We can IP address blacklist them, consider them a bad actor during the duration of the attack. We also do what we call server-side detection, or stress-based detection, behavioral detection. This is one of our new kind of cool features, which, just FYI, we borrowed from another product called DDoS Hybrid Defender. But the idea here is very similar to this. This is recognizing an increase in requests from this source. This feature is recognizing an increase in the stress being put on any particular server. So if a server is starting to show signs of being under stress because of X number of transactions it's processing that we're sending to it, then it's going to be looked at as a potential denial of service attack in progress. In the new ASM class I'll be putting out in the next month or so, that has a lot more lessons. There is a full lesson on the behavioral DOS protection, which is part of our new WAF, Advanced WAF offering. It's very cool. I'm not going to get into it now because of time. If you're curious, you can ask me about it later or tomorrow. I'll tell you a little bit about it. And we can completely customize those thresholds. We can also even utilize an algorithm built into ASM that can do auto thresholding for us based on trends. What's normal? Uh-oh, something's out of the norm. Or we can just set our own thresholds for what we consider to be an acceptable number of transactions per second, and an acceptable increase in transactions per second, and so forth. And what happens is, I'm going to go back to this graphic. the image I'm trying to portray here is when ASM recognizes we're under DOS attack, it then begins to block those requests at this perimeter I've created before they're even processed by the ASM security policy. And you will see this, if you do this exercise, what you're going to see several times throughout this exercise is you will submit a DOS attack, and you'll see that all those DOS requests were not only processed by ASM security policy, but sent to the web server. And then you add the protection, the DOS protection, and then you see a very interesting thing. You see that there are no entries in the security log. What that means is not a single request was processed by the ASM security policy. They were all blocked before that. And then the third form of protection is identifying bots, bot protection. Another really cool feature. So we can identify bots in many different ways. Typically we do things like sending out JavaScript challenges or CAPTCHA challenges. So this is set up a little bit differently than a security policy. We have to create what is called a DOS profile under our DOS protection. We click on create, give it a name. Seems pretty simple. Look, there's nothing else there. But we do have to go a little bit farther. But I do want to point out, so I'm going to click on my new DOS profile to configure it. I want to point out that you see three options across the top here. And tomorrow we are going to talk about AFM. And part of AFM we'll talk about is our layer 2, 3, 4 denial of service protection. The cool thing here is we can use one DOS profile that we're going to attach to our virtual server that has all of the 2, 3, 4 DOS stuff built into it and the layer 7 stuff built into it, one profile. That's very handy. We're just going to look at application security though today. So we'll click on that. By default, it's turned off. So we're going to turn it on. And then on this tab here, you have some basic settings here. For example, or first off, here's all those features we were just looking at on the last slide. Bot detection, TPS base, that's client side, TPS, server side, behavioral and stress. So there's a few features here on this general settings. The heavy URL detection, it's kind of an odd feature. I can't even really, I can give you an example, but I can't really give you, I've never really played with it a lot. But let's say we have a web page that when users request it, every time they request it, it's going to require a heavy response because it goes to my database and it gets a big response from the database and sends that back to the users. So every response looks like a big response. We don't want ASM to ever think that big response is some sort of a DOS attack. So we can identify URLs that we should be prepared are heavy URLs. We can also immediately block geolocations that we don't want. This is kind of like what we just saw in the last exercise. This blocks it though before it gets to the ASM security policy. And then there's a few other settings down at the bottom that I'm not going to cover. I don't recommend you cover them. It's just a way to show there's some additional things you can do. First, let's talk about that client-side transaction per second detection. It's the only one you'll notice that is enabled by default. Again, it recognizes attacks from a client side. Something's off. Anomaly detection. Something's wrong. Again, like I said, it's enabled by default. I told you there's two ways we can set our thresholds. We can manually set them, or you can use a feature within ASM to do automatic thresholding, where it builds some baseline data based on traffic coming in. It's a whole other very cool feature, but we're not going to discuss it here. One of these days I do want to create an extra exercise for it as a demo or something like that. We're just going to use manual thresholds. And all the thresholds are attached to these different source indicators. So we can recognize the source as a potential problem in all of these categories, just by their IP, or their device ID, or the geolocation they're in. So if we get a lot of requests from the same geolocation that look odd, we can treat that as a lot of requests just from one source, by the IP, or by the URL that is being accessed at one time. Site-wide means an entire virtual server, the entire virtual server that this profile is attached to. For each one of those 5 options, under Edit, you'll see 2 categories, 2 things. You will see the detection. This is how we detect if there's a problem. And I'm not going to go over all these settings, but basically what we're talking about here is if there's an increase by so much percentage or a maximum of this, if the number of requests has gone up so much, that's the detection. Now we know there's a problem from this source IP. So that's the detection. Then down at the bottom of that we have the mitigation. If this happens, then we're going to do this. And there's options down here as well. We can do the client-side integrity. That's where we send the JavaScript challenge that must be returned. Most browsers can do that. So if they're using a regular web browser, they're going to be fine. If they're using a tool of some sort, it's probably going to fail, and they won't be able to keep submitting requests. We can also do the CAPTCHA challenge. You saw that earlier. It's very similar. Or we can just choose to block everything. Once we're under attack, just block it. I don't even ask. Or rate limit them. So we can set these thresholds and these mitigation options. I'm going to go back for a second. For each one of these 5. You'll notice right now, by default, I only have mitigation enabled. This is the default. It's only enabled by source IP and by URL. The other ones aren't enabled. You, of course, could enable it if you wanted. So that's our source-based TPS detection. Then we have the server-side detection, which is actually very similar to what we just saw. Notice it says predicts stress on the server. So it means once we have this enabled, ASM actually kind of monitors the servers to see, hey, how you feeling? You doing okay? You overutilized? That kind of thing. That's not enabled by default, so we can turn that on if we want. Same thing, thresholds, I can do automatic or manual. I can set all of the same kinds of thresholds. It's very similar. But the one difference here at the bottom is the behavioral. And this is something that we're actually not going to cover in this course. I'm actually going to take this out of this as well, because this is a whole lesson in the new ASM class. But just so you guys know, what happens here is once I enable this, it's a very cool feature. Once I enable this, for both bad actors and the request signature detection, I'll try to summarize this in one sentence. ASM then starts to monitor traffic, regular traffic, and it knows what regular traffic is. It knows what looks like regular traffic because of all these requests that have come in. Don't ask how. It's all based on algorithms. If I knew, I wouldn't tell you, but I don't know. But what I can tell you is that at some point, a request might come in that doesn't match what it has seen now as normal traffic types. What's interesting, though, is when ASM gets a request like that, even when this is enabled, it still sends it on through to the web server. And it keeps doing that. But it's also doing a second thing. Simultaneously, it's watching the stress of the servers. based on the stuff up above. So eventually, at some point, it might get a request that comes in. It doesn't look like what's normal. Let me check out the server. The server is really overutilized. The server is under stress. The server is in trouble. I'm getting a weird request. The server is in trouble. That is when ASM puts kind of this into play. So it now will drop the request, and with this checkbox, it'll actually create a dynamic signature based on whatever this request was. So now we have a new ASM signature to identify this as a new attack type. And that's actually a really cool feature. Because the problem with any kind of signature-based tools is they're only as good as the last time we got signature updates. Well, we get to create our own. ASM knows how to create its own signatures based on what it's finding out as new bad traffic. It's a cool feature. So I'm not going to go into all this. I won't really go into that I'm going to take that out of the slides so that you don't have to cover it, because I would rather people take more ASM training, of course. So the third feature we talked about is the proactive bot detection. That's how we detect bots that are submitting requests. Again, this is not enabled by default, but we could just simply enable it with one option. Always block. It tells you here what this is saying in so many words is, in order to use this, we also have to have our bot signatures enabled. And you'll notice as soon as I've enabled it, it automatically enables my bot signatures for me. That's nice. Then we have some options. How do I recognize if the browser is suspicious? We do it in a couple of different ways. Let me go back here. We do JavaScript challenges and CAPTCHA challenges. And then the grace period, this is how long we wait before we actually activate mitigation. So if I'm waiting, trying to get a JavaScript challenge, and I'm not getting a response, we don't block them immediately. So sometimes there's just latency for some strange reason. So this is the grace period that we wait before mitigation takes place. By default, it's 300 seconds. We lower this in the lab environment because I don't want you to wait that long to see results. This is actually, there's a couple of places in our UI, in our GUI. I just thought I'd show you here, as I clicked on CAPTCHA settings. You can actually, if you've got, you guys already saw the CAPTCHA challenge in your last exercise. I saw several of you struggling with getting the CAPTCHA entered, as have I many times. You can actually change the way the CAPTCHA challenge looks if you wanted to. And you can also see how it's looking currently. So then you've got your bot signatures. Under bot signatures, again, these are not enabled by default. But I'm going to go ahead and this call out is wrong. This should be here. Wait, let me look here. Yes, the call out that I'm about to look at should be my bot signatures categories call out. So you know what I'm going to do right now? Because I don't want to forget this, I'm going to actually fix that right now. Why not? I probably have to, there we go. Let's see if this works. Those I have to make a note. I might forget my, let's see. Ah, there we go, perfect. So we have different default categories of bot signatures. I wouldn't necessarily get yourself too wrapped up into what all these categories are, network scanner, spam bot, DOS tool, and all that. Just know that each category has a bunch of signatures by default added to it. Remember that in the 3-day partner boot camp, we have updated signatures that come every 6 or so weeks. When we get those updated signatures, it also includes updating these signatures as well. And it automatically puts these signatures into the categories that are developed, our gurus in Tel Aviv, where they belong. The trick here, though, is what do we want ASM to do when it recognizes a signature. So I'll give you the best example that you're going to do in your lab is you're going to use the Apache Bench tool to submit requests. Apache Bench is one of the signature checks. So what do we want ASMs to do when it recognizes somebody's using Apache Bench? We could do nothing. We could just get an alert. We could just create log entries, or we could block it. And you can, this is for all the categories, but you can also specify what to do for each individual category. Below this, we have what we call our benign categories. So these are things that are typically, they look like bots, but they're not malicious bots. And we wouldn't typically want to block them. At the very bottom, this is my full list of nearly 1,000 bot signatures that you could disable if you didn't want them to block anything. You can go to view under options, DOS protection. You can view all of these categories. So these are all the bot signatures. Oh, I'm sorry, these are actually the signatures. So these are all the signatures, and you can see for each one, you can see what category they were in, if it's malicious or benign. You can also create custom signatures. If you create custom signatures, then you will see them here. Now, I create my custom signatures with a period at the beginning so that they appear at the top of the list. Otherwise, you have to scroll through and find them and search for them. So I can see that not only have I created custom signatures, I also put them into a custom category, a custom signature category. Interesting thing, when you create a custom signature category and you come back to the signature category list page, you actually will now see that on that page and decide what you want to do with it. Block it, report it, or nothing. A lot of flexibility. A lot of flexibility, a lot of features. How do I attach this to the virtual server? Probably no big surprise. We go to security policies. You don't need a security policy to make this work. It's one or the other or both. But down at the bottom we have our DOS profile. You'll enable that and then select the correct profile, and that's all you got to do. Now, if and when you do this exercise, the exercise will also have you create a custom event log profile. You'll also create a log profile tomorrow for AFM. The reason you create the custom event log profile is because there's a couple of things that we can log that are DOS related, and the only way you can log them is to create a log profile. For example, you can log all bot activity. And if you choose to log all bot activity, you can then go and view the bot defense log. This is just like the event log you've always been looking at, except this is now layer 7 DOS logging. So here you can see what happened, what virtual server, where did it come from, what was the source, but more important information is over to the right. You can see what method was used, what page they were requesting, and then kind of what happened. In this case, it was a JavaScript challenge, and it failed because they weren't able to do it. No challenge possible, so you can see literally every blocked request based on DOS, or in this case, based on bot protection. So this shows all of your proactive bot defense activity. You'll see JavaScript challenges. You'll see when somebody entered in a CAPTCHA challenge successfully. You'll see when someone did not enter a CAPTCHA challenge successfully, and so on. It's kind of cool. You'll see when a bot signature was matched. So here's my Apache Bench signature. And I believe it says it was a illegal request. It was reset. TCP reset was sent. Basically means it was blocked. We also have kind of a nifty little report called the DOS analysis report. On this page, there's a lot of stuff The one thing that I highlight on this page is this. This really shows you the mitigations that have taken place. These are the DOS mitigations that have taken place over the time range indicated. And these little sliders let you actually change the time range even more. So for example, I'm showing about 20 minutes worth of time. And you're going to see all these categories. The one that I want to point out here, proactive mitigation, that's bot mitigation. The one I wanted to point out was shun blocked. Shun blocked means it was blocked because it's now considered a bad actor. So it's like bad actor blocked because their client-side integrity defense identified them as a bad source. That's all based on TPS, client TPS protection. Another nifty report page is the custom page. You can create a custom DOS report page. On this page you can view all the default widgets. These are called widgets. You can view all the default widgets. You can remove widgets that you don't care about. And then down, so this is a default widget for the top URLs by transaction that are being hit, that are being attacked. But down at the bottom, I've actually created 2 different custom widgets that show exactly what I want to see in the time range I want to see it. I want to see the last hour of activity and so forth. A lot of customization. We make this page whatever we want it to be. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. So that is the Layer 7 denial of service protection as a good top-level starting point. There's not that much more to it than that. It's not that complicated. It's not like setting up a security policy where we've got to do all this learning and staging and all that. We just literally turn on what we want to turn on and start blocking and start protecting our web applications. So if you have a chance to do this exercise in the next several days or a week, which I hope you do, it's basically made up of a couple of parts. The first part is you just attack using several tools. You use several different methods that hackers use to do layer 7 denial of service attacks. And again, what you'll see is not only does every attack succeeds, they all go through ASM. They all go through the security policy. And you see that because of the log, the policy log file. And then you start adding the protections that you need. You add the proactive bot defense, client-side TPS. You lower some values so we can actually make this work in our lab. Initiate the attacks again, and you start seeing blocking. And then you get to view that bot defense log. You see all the things getting blocked in the bot defense log. Create a custom DOS report. And that's it.